This is a brief project update on the Porsche 944 related to my experience with a failed rear crankshaft seal. As I've been working to restore this car over the past 4 years, I've ended up replacing nearly every oil seal on the engine, with the exception of the rear main seal, and sure enough, that final seal decided to give way over the winter, and it began to seep oil down the back of the oil pan, so I performed an oil change on the car and drove it a bit more, hoping it would magically go away. Wishful thinking, I know, and of course it didn't. So the 944 went back up on jack stands in February to replace the seal. As you may already know, the rear crankshaft seal sits behind the flywheel, which is behind the clutch assembly, which is behind the torque tube and the transaxle. You get where this is going. But anyway, it's essentially a $15 oil seal that requires 10 to 12 hours of labor to access and replace. As we go through here, I'll be providing a summary of the primary steps required to access the seal, as well as an overview of the challenges and discoveries I've made along the way. So let's get into it. After disconnecting the positive terminal on the battery, I decided to first remove the speed and reference sensors, which are very tightly positioned on top of the clutch housing. Removing the electrical connector bracket from the intake manifold provides a little more space to work from above, and you can also snake your left arm down behind the air filter housing to use two hands. After removing the 10mm bolts, the sensors pull straight out in most cases. One of mine got stuck, but a shot of penetrating spray freed it up for removal. Since this is a later car, the aluminum sensor bracket also needs to be removed because it features a metal shield that protrudes down into the bell housing. The two M6 Allen bolts securing the bracket are notoriously difficult to remove because of their location, but a variety of socket extensions and universal joints can be deployed here. I ended up breaking the bolts free from above and then loosening and fully removing the bolts from below. Next on the list was to remove the lower exhaust from the car, which I prefer to do in two separate pieces. If you've never removed your exhaust, expect at least a few broken bolts along the way. I've had this one off a few times, so there were no real issues this time around. One discovery I made, however, was the source of a small exhaust leak I'd been trying to track down, and there was evidence of that at the base of the 2.3 manifold. You can see that the flange on the 1.4 has a perfect black ring of exhaust deposits where the gasket was in place, but the 2.3 has a pattern blowing out to the side where it wasn't quite tight enough. You can also see mirroring patterns on both sides of the gaskets as confirmation, and I've got a slightly thicker set of gaskets to remedy this during reassembly. I didn't encounter any problems when removing the starter, the clutch slave cylinder, or the wiring harness clamps from the bell housing, which was nice. The shift lever and linkage arm were also removed without issue, but I did find some cracks in the rubber insulator boot that sits just below the lever shift boot, and since this prevents fumes from entering the cabin, I've got a new insulator to replace it with. Moving towards the back of the car, I disconnected the shifter from the linkage at the transaxle, along with the electrical connector for the speedometer on the left side, and finally the wiring for the reverse light switch on the right side. The driveshaft coupler unbolted and slid back pretty easily once the M8 Allen bolts were removed, and the CV axle joints were bagged and zip-tied out of the way after being disconnected from the axle flanges. Next up was to remove the M10 Allen bolts and the 17mm hex head bolt that secures the transaxle to the torque tube. No surprises there, and at last it was time to unbolt the transaxle from the transmission mount above. After supporting the case from below with a transmission jack and removing the two 13mm lock nuts, I tapped the two long bolts out from the side, first using a long ratchet extension and then a screwdriver to push them all the way out. In my haste to lower the transaxle from the car, I had forgotten to push the plastic shift linkage tube back into the torque tube, but after hearing a faint crunching sound, I was able to raise the transaxle again and save the tube. These plastic tubes won't slide back all the way because they feature two small bumps on the outside edges designed to hold the tube in position, but they can be pushed back far enough to separate the two parts, and with some careful maneuvering, the transaxle was lowered and pulled away from the car. With the transaxle out of the way, we can get a closer look at the condition of the rubber inside the transmission mount, and you can see just how much it flexes back and forth. I'm going to replace this old mount with one of Lindsay Racing's Ultra mounts, which will add some rigidity to the driveline and transfer a bit more power to the wheels. Even with everything bolted up, there can be quite a bit of movement in the transaxle under load, so this will be a nice upgrade to the car. It was now time to remove the four 17mm bolts attaching the torque tube to the clutch housing so the tube can be pulled back. After removing the shifter linkage from the car, the torque tube can be rotated 180 degrees and pulled towards the back of the car. Since this is a later car, the fuel filter clamp needs to be disconnected and the transmission carrier removed from the car to create additional space for the torque tube. With the drive shaft now disconnected on both ends, the condition of the shaft and the torque tube bearings can be assessed. In this case, the splines were in really good shape, but the bearings were a bit noisy. Although I can't yet hear the bearing noise when the car is running, this is something that will need to be addressed during reassembly. At the clutch end of the drive shaft, I was seeing a very slight wobble when spinning the shaft inside the tube, and I found some minor lateral play when pushing the shaft up and down. I won't be able to tell if this is from worn plastic inner sleeves or wear in the shaft itself until it's removed, but I'm hoping this can be remedied with a new set of bearings. When placing a new pilot bearing on the end of the shaft, I found there to be a good tolerance with less than 0.5 millimeter of lateral play, and the end doesn't appear to be tapered at all, which is a good sign. So the torque tube will need to come out, which requires disconnecting the rear brake lines as well as the rear suspension so that it can be lowered for clearance. If the shaft ends up being salvageable, I'll probably opt for a set of super bearings from Black Sea R&D, as they're more robust and reliable than the factory bearings, and if not, I may have to look at some rebuilt torque tube options. Moving on to the clutch housing, the clutch fork pin needs to be first removed using an M8 bolt and some downward force, and I didn't encounter any difficulties here. Next up is removing the 4 19mm bolts securing the clutch housing to the engine block, the upper two of which are a bit difficult to access. Again, time to break out some socket extensions and universal joints. With the bolts removed, I found the clutch housing was being prevented from removal because of the rubber heater hose at the back of the engine, so I had to push that up a bit while pulling back on the aluminum housing to clear the guide tube from the release bearing. When inspecting the clutch fork pin for wear, I discovered some grooves caused by the needle bearings, and surprisingly, it was evident on both sides. So rather than cutting a new notch and reversing the pin, I'll just pick up a new one since they only cost about $40. Even though the clutch on this car had been previously replaced with a spring-centered clutch under prior ownership, it's become heavily oxidized and the throwout bearing is in pretty rough shape. Not a huge deal because at this point it just makes sense to replace the clutch assembly anyway, which is what I'll be doing. To remove the pressure plate, the 9 8mm 12-point bolts will need to be removed while applying counter leverage on the crankshaft. I used a long breaker bar with a 24mm deep socket attached to the front crankshaft bolt to achieve this, and with all the bolts removed, the pressure plate and clutch plate can be dropped down to reveal the flywheel. The flywheel is removed in much the same manner using a 12mm 12-point socket, and it may need to be broken free with some tapping and wiggling to remove it from the crankshaft, but with the flywheel removed, we can finally get a look at the rear main seal. If you've got an active oil leak at the rear center of the oil pan on a 944, the two primary suspects will be a failed oil pan gasket and or a failed rear crankshaft seal. But as you can see, the two seals are positioned closely together, so it can be difficult to determine the root cause without getting deep into the repair. I had previously replaced the pan gasket on this car, so I was pretty confident in the new leak resulting from a failed crankshaft seal, and that's confirmed here where we can see fresh oil surrounding the exterior of the seal, and it's coming down from above the center line of the pan gasket. Further evidence is seen on the rear mounting surface of the flywheel, where fresh oil deposits have collected around the area where it mounts to the crankshaft. Here's a closer look at the flywheel and the clutch assembly. If the flywheel friction surface features any scorching, cracks, or grooves, it should be resurfaced or replaced. This one doesn't look too bad, but I plan on having it cleaned and resurfaced anyway since we're already here. This clutch plate probably has about half of its life left, but it is pretty rusted out, as is the pressure plate, so it'll be nice to get a new clutch kit installed in the car. I've actually been sitting on a Sachs clutch kit for a couple years now, and it includes the spacers and circlip for the release bearing, a new clutch alignment tool and a pilot bearing, a spring-centered clutch disc, a new release bearing, and a pressure plate. When comparing the two clutch plates side by side, you can see how they've updated the design, where the older plate features 6 smaller springs and the new plate has 4 sets of larger springs, which is interesting to see. After replacing the crankshaft seal, I'll also be adding in a new guide tube, new bolts for the flywheel and pressure plate, as well as some new needle bearings for the clutch fork. So anyway, I thought I'd share this update for anyone thinking about replacing the clutch and or rear main seal on their 944. It is quite a bit of work to get in there and get it done, and while none of the individual steps are particularly complex, this should give you a good idea of the quantity and type of work involved, as well as some common challenges and things to watch out for.